together with David, we are your mighty auction committee. The auction is in 2 weeks. Are you ready? Yes. A few details so you can be really ready. The dinner will be $15 per person with a maximum of $30 per family. We'll have delicious food from Wegmans and desserts made by our very own dessert brigade. All will give you the energy to spend, spend, spend. If you haven't signed up yet for the dinner, find me during coffee hour and I'll do it for you. We need your help. Donations. Yes, it is past the deadline, but it is not too late to donate an item or event or service. There are 3 ways to donate. See me after church, find the link for the Google form from the Ken Hart's email yesterday, or email us at our email, channingauction@yahoo.com. Woo, but do it soon. Okay, talk to me after church. Now for 3 ups: setup, cleanup, and settling up. First, setup. We need a few Channingites to come an hour early and help us set up. The early bird gets the worm and our gratitude. So let us know if you can help. Cleanup. We'll need everybody to pitch in and clean up after the live auction is done on Saturday. Settling up, or rather not settling up. Since the online portion of the auction will not conclude until Sunday evening, there will be no settling up at the auction. Whew, awesome. We will eat, enjoy the auction, clean up, and go home. It'll be great. Basic auction timeline. This is in 2 weeks, 2 weekends from now. On Friday, November 10th at 6 p.m., the online component will start, and that's on Octria and also on Sign Up Genius. On Saturday, November 11th at 5:30 to 8:30, we'll have our live auction here at Epiphany in what I'm starting to call the Church Undercroft. And it will be an in-person dinner with light entertainment. Because that heavy entertainment is just, Sunday, November 12th, the online auction portion ends at 6 p.m. And then we will be settling up on Monday and Tuesday with you. Remember to look for the person wearing this sign. After the service, today that person will be I. Thank you.
Let us enter into worship with the words of Reverend Karen G. Johnston. As we gather this morning, let us be a people of not forgetting. Let us practice holding collective memories that might otherwise slip into that enormous void that sucks at and corrodes any future we hold dear. Let us practice honoring truth-telling up from the past that must come fully into the now, lest we falter and fail, lest the whole remain in pieces. Let not our need for comfort or simplicity, for easy forgiveness or false pardon, smother the heartbreak that still needs healing. Let us practice resilience with reckoning. Let us marry memory and promise. Let us dance in the tension we find there. Let us rest in the integrity we cultivate there. Let us be partners with the possibility that emerges there. It is good we gather. Come, let us worship together. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit to join our voices in our opening hymn, number 6 in the gray hymnal, Just as Long as I Have Breath. With words by Katie Romano Griffin. May the flame of this chalice, the symbol of our faith, connect us to all who have come before us, all who are with us in body and in spirit, and all who are yet to come into being. May it serve as a reminder of our unity and connection across all time and space. I invite you all to gather round as we hear a special story called Maybe Tomorrow. This is by Charlotte Agel and illustrated by Ana Ramirez Gonzalez. Elba had a big block. She'd been dragging it around for a long time. It made her walk slowly. It made her think darkly. It was heavy. Norris danced everywhere he went, even uphill. One day, Elva was sitting on her block in the park, like she usually did. Along came Norris in a cloud of butterflies. At first, Elva couldn't see him in all the shininess. "Hello, I'm Norris," he said. "Do you want to go on a picnic?" "I'm Elba," said Elba. "I do not go on picnics." "Well, what do you want to do?" asked Norris. "Sit here with my block." "But you're already doing that." "I know." "Is it fun?" "Not really, no." "What's in it?" Norris wanted to know. "In it," said Elba. "What do you mean?" "Well, it's a box, isn't it? Something must be inside it." "It's not a box, it's a block," said Elba. "Are you sure?" asked Norris. "Yes," said Elba, prodding it with her umbrella. She always carried one in case it rained. Norris sat down next to Elba. "I feel something in there," he said. "What?" asked Elba, who didn't feel a thing. "Something sad," said Norris. "I think it wants to come out." "How?" whispered Elba. Norris and Elba sat there thinking. The butterflies flitted this way and that. "Maybe tomorrow," said Norris, as the sun set. "Maybe," said Elba. The next day it was raining. The butterflies looked a little damp. The weather didn't slow down Norris, though. "You're making me dizzy," said Elba. "It's time for tea," said Norris. They had good, quiet tea with rain in it. "Maybe tomorrow," said Norris. "Maybe," said Elba, "if tomorrow ever comes." Tomorrow didn't come, but another today did. "It's really time," said Norris, "because I want you to come to the ocean with me." "Okay, I'll just take my block," said Elba, surprising herself. "But it's too heavy," she added, "right?" "My butterflies and I will help you," said Norris. They did help. It was a very, very long journey. Elba and Norris talked and didn't talk. "I'm this little bird," said Elba as they crested the last hill. "She is gone." "I missed her too," said Norris. Elba paused. "But you didn't know her." "No, but you are my friend, and I can help you miss her." By the time they got to the shore, Norris knew many things about Little Bird. "We watched the moon together," Elba said. "She taught me to sing. We were hardly ever apart." "She loved you so much," Norris said. "Yes," said Elba as the waves crashed. Some of the butterflies started to fly out toward the horizon. "Come back," shouted Elba. "It's okay," said Norris. "Sometimes we have to let things go." They both sat down to rest on Elba's block, but there wasn't enough room. "I think it's smaller," said Elba in amazement, "and lighter." "Definitely," agreed Norris. Together they stood and faced the roaring sea. "I'll always have this block, you know," said Elba. "Yes, maybe you will," said Norris, "but I will help you carry it sometimes." The two friends stayed by the ocean until the sun set and the view was calm. Some of the butterflies came back. Some flew off forever. The next day was sunny. "Do you want to go on a picnic?" Norris asked. "Yes," said Elba. Please remain seated for our prayer hymn, number 1003 in the Teal hymnal, "Where Do We Come From?" In the silence that follows the spoken prayer, you are invited to come forward and light a candle for any joys or concerns you hold in heart this morning. Join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation as we are led by the words of Sarah Goodman. Find a comfortable place for your body. Breathe as deeply as you are able. Hold in your mind the image of all things, all beings coming from the same tree, roots stretched in limitless tangles of connection and sustenance, interconnected and interlaced in a web of living and dying that is so beautifully designed and most times invisible. Join me in breathing. Breathe in for our lives touched by ancestors known and unknown. Breathe out for living lives that will touch our descendants. Breathe in for folks held in loving arms as they were raised up. Breathe out for folks who had to make their own way too early in their lives. Breathe in for beloveds who we hold close in our hearts every day. Breathe out for beloveds we sometimes have trouble reaching out to. Breathe in for loving. Breathe out for losing. Breathe in for parents doing the best that they can. Breathe out for the impossible decisions they've had to make. Breathe in for those living with addictions, mental illness, and grief. Breathe out for those living with and caring for folks living with addiction, mental illness, and grief. Breathe in for caregivers of all kinds who give of themselves to make other people's lives better, more whole. Breathe out to honor this holy work. Let's enter the silence together. for the gifts we have been given by Thomas Rhodes. Each week we take up an offering for the support of this congregation, and often for the support of others who are working for a better world. To be honest, we need your support, especially in today's economy, when pledges are down and the future appears uncertain. But there is another truth here as well. Another truth that says some of us need to make an offering. Some of us need to make an offering not only because the congregation needs our support, but because we need to remind ourselves of our own generosity. Because the act of giving something away is a tangible way of acknowledging the gifts we have been given. If we don't have enough for ourselves, we may be poor in material wealth. But when we don't have enough to share, then we are truly poor in spirit. And none of us should leave this place feeling poor in spirit. For those of you watching the service online, you may contribute to a virtual offering plate using the donate button on the church website, or by mailing a check to the church office. Will the ushers please come forward? For all that you give and all that you do for our church community and its wider concerns, we give thanks. Carl Jung once said, "I became aware of the fateful links between me and my ancestors. I feel very strongly that I am under the influence of things or questions which were left incomplete and unanswered by my parents and grandparents and more distant ancestors. It often seems as if there were an impersonal karma within a family which is passed on from parents to children. It has always seemed to me that I had to answer questions which fate had posed to my forefathers and which had not yet been answered, or as if I had to complete, or perhaps continue, things which previous ages had left unfinished." Hear the words of Adrienne Marie Brown. There is a saying that has been popular in the past few years. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. I love this idea, and I have put seeds in that soil. But there are also in my lineage ancestors for whom I am likely their worst nightmare. A black, queer, pansexual, polycurious, unmarried, childless, defiant, feminist, post-capitalist earth lover, constantly thinking about what might be the most revolutionary next step I could take. Yes, I know there are ancestors who would feel that they had failed in their work because I exist. But what I know, which maybe these ancestors have some sense of now, is that the impulse to dominate and control and harm and deny the truth of divergent human experiences is rooted in self-loathing. I have to honor that those ancestors lived in a time of less knowing, less connectedness, and less possibility. I have to honor that their lives are crucial to my callings. I pass my current experiences of freedom and delight back to the ancestors who did not have access to rest or agency over their time. I pass my current experiences of self-love and radical self-acceptance back to my ancestors who thought they could only belong through some version of destruction of themselves and others. I invite you to rise and body your spirit to join our voices in hymn 1051 in the Teal hymnal, We Are. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. Our connection to our ancestors may be a source of comfort, a sense of connection and belonging to the people themselves, the soothing rhythm of patterns and cycles repeated through time. And yet our heritage may also offer us challenge in the form of unhealthy patterns, cycles of abuse, addiction, untreated mental illness, unaddressed trauma. We may be reluctant to name these parts of our inheritance. Does it dishonor our ancestors to be airing their dirty laundry? At a gathering of cousins this past week, I learned many family secrets I had never heard before. It felt right to be sharing the stories. I think it actually honors our ancestors to acknowledge their pain and to reflect on how it may have impacted our parents and ourselves. These days, there is increasing exploration of generational trauma and the idea that trauma can literally be inherited. Epigenetics is an emerging field that looks how genes can be turned on and off and expressed differently through changes in environment and behavior. Professor of Psychiatry and Neuroscience Rachel Yehuda says to think about genetics as the computer and epigenetics as the software or the app. In an On Being interview, Krista Tippett introduces Yehuda as a pioneer in understanding how behavioral and environmental experiences can transmit effects at a cellular level and across generations. Yehuda's research on the children of mothers who were pregnant when they survived the 9/11 attacks demonstrated, quote, how experiences can transmit a biological vulnerability to stress in future generations. In her extensive work with children of Holocaust survivors, Yehuda found that they were 3 times more likely than other Jewish adults to experience PTSD if they had a traumatic experience. Krista Tippett points out that epigenetics gives a chemical basis for talking about difficult topics of generational trauma, such as what happens to populations of refugees, or Aboriginal peoples in Australia, or African Americans in this country, or the wounding of the Native American soul. Psychotherapist, healer, and author Resmaa Menakem describes how racial trauma gets transmitted through the generations. He says, think about the fight or flight or freeze response. The chemicals adrenaline, cortisol, and norepinephrine are designed to be released for short bursts to deal with an imminent threat. But, to quote Menakem, what if the thing that is dangerous doesn't leave for 250 years? What happens to all of those chemicals? What does it do to the DNA expression? Menakem says we have it in our bodies as notions. So imagine that going from one line all the way down, and by the time it gets to me and you, we have this sense that something is off. We have this vibratory sense, and we don't have a language for it. Founder of analytical psychology, Carl Jung, felt it as the deep calling to answer the unanswered questions of his ancestors, to complete their unfinished business, and I would add, to heal their untended wounds. Epigenetics, in addition to explaining generational trauma, also offers the hope of healing from it. To quote Professor Rachel Yehuda, we're starting to understand that just because you're born with a certain set of genes, you're not in a biological prison as a result of those genes. That changes can be made to how those genes function that can help. It's not a genetic change per se, it's a change to the program. Yehuda says it can help us just to have the information about our heritage, knowing that due to our biology, we have something to overcome. And simply knowing what is going on in our bodies can take a lot of the confusion and panic away from it. With that understanding, we can begin to increase the repertoire of possible responses, says Yehuda. PTSD is one possible response to trauma. Another is resilience. It's about how you take your trauma forward and use it positively. We can also pass along coping strategies to the next generation who we know will be impacted as well. Yehuda found that some epigenetic changes occur in response to psychotherapy, and that healing is also transmitted to the next generation. So far, we focused on the idea of breaking the cycle, healing the current generation. And we've even seen that in doing so, we can pay it forward to future generations. But what about paying it backward? In today's reading, Adrienne Marie Brown said, "I pass my current experiences of self-love and radical self-acceptance back to my ancestors who thought they could only belong through some version of destruction of themselves and others." This may seem like, may be seen as a metaphorical approach to sending healing back through the generations, but is it actually possible to heal our ancestors? Some healing traditions say yes. In Chinese medicine, healing for the patient also heals 3 generations forward and 3 generations back. In my nearly 3 decades of being treated with 5-element acupuncture, this is a concept that my practitioner, Lynn Schwartz, reminds me of often. As you heal energetically, Lynn says, you release the energy that was stuck from the past, and you free it from passing on. In trying to understand the concept of healing back through the generations, I imagine that sometimes you can heal something in yourself so deeply that it's as if it unravels a knot in the cord connecting you to your ancestors, and it sends the healing back through. According to my acupuncturist, generational healing applies to the direct bloodline, where the child will often repeat the birth parent's actions, even if they don't know the birth parents. And yet it also applies to families who don't share DNA through the deep connections created in the household. Even those of us who don't have children or grandchildren can still make impacts that reverberate across generations. When you heal at an energetic level, it impacts your way of being with the people in your life, whoever your chosen family may be. Healing also ripples out through our interdependent web. Lynn Schwartz explains that as we heal, we go out into the community as a better version, a better listener and not a reaction machine, more self-expressed and less likely to be triggered in the presence of others. In today's story for all ages, Elba had a big block. She'd been carrying it around for a long time. Elba might have benefited from an acupuncture treatment. In her case, Elba began to heal with the support of a new friend, Norris, who was patient and willing to share the weight of Elba's sadness. Norris's way of being was a source of healing to Elba. As far as healing the community through time, I'm picturing the multidimensional web that Ostara described at the beginning of the month. A web that extends not only out around us at this moment in time, but includes a dimension of depth connecting us through time to those who came before and those who come after. Imagine that we touched a string at our point on the 3D web, and our healing was so profound that it reverberated through time. That's powerful stuff. Yet, even powerful stuff has its limits. As I'm writing this, I would give anything for the acupuncture treatment that would cure my adult son's depression. And I talk about that here with his permission. Give me the needle points that will make him want to get out of bed when just being alive feels utterly exhausting. Let me pass through the healing that will give him the courage and strength to create a life he loves. But it doesn't work that way. Sometimes I want to shake my fist at acupuncture. What good is all your healing 3 generations forward now? But it isn't about fixing other people. Living is his choice, and he has his own healing work to do. The best I can do is to get the acupuncture treatment for my reactions to his depression, to clear the blocks that have me stuck in survival mode, stuffing down all those pesky emotions, to needle the points that will give me the courage to say out loud how scared I am of losing him, to express how deeply I love him, to make it crystal clear how much he matters. The same goes for healing it backwards. When my mother's body, mind, and spirit declined from stagnation, Alzheimer's, and grief, I would have gladly focused my acupuncture treatment on curing her. Instead, healing it backward meant focusing on my acceptance and my presence so that I could be patient with her, love on her, and be a bright spot in her life to help her feel safe and happy and loved. Reflecting on generational healing in Chinese medicine, I was curious about the number 3. Was this a numerology thing or a literal thing? And my acupuncturist says it's a literal thing. I realized that in Chinese culture, it was not unusual to have 3 generations living in the same household, so the impacts of healing would be visible in many cases. Some of us may have known ancestors 3 generations back, and perhaps even descendants 3 generations forward. If you did the math, you may have noticed that 3 generations back plus me plus 3 generations forward equals 7 generations. Chinese medicine is not the only healing modality to talk in terms of healing 7 generations. In fact, I found a flurry of references. A YouTube video by Nita Gupta from India titled Ancestors Healing, Heal Your 7 Generations. A Facebook group called The Healing of the 7 Generations from an indigenous community in Canada. A 2019 Christian workshop titled Healing 7 Generations, Integrating Generational Healing Prayer. In some cases, it seemed like the focus was on healing 7 generations forward. In other cases, it seemed like healing 7 generations back. Sometimes it was a span of 7 generations where it wasn't clear which generation initiated the healing. And some sites even asserted that one's healing carried 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. Regardless of the numbers, if ancient Chinese medicine, yogic traditions, indigenous healing practices, Christian prayer, Carl Jung, groundbreaking epigenetics, and current generational healing practices all are in alignment on this healing ancestors business, I say there must be something to it. As we move from October's theme of heritage to November's theme of generosity, we can look at the generosity of extending our own healing across the generations. Resmaa Menakem says, trauma is not destiny. Trauma isn't even essential. Essence exists before trauma. Energy exists before trauma. We are energy having a human experience. Menachem reminds us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can be thwarted, it can be manipulated, it can be moved around. Menachem encourages moving through what thwarts and constricts you so that the expanse of who you really are can bloom. The hymn, Building a New Way, is one we often use for social justice. But what if we think of it in terms of generational healing? We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are working to be free of the grip of unhealthy patterns, some of which may have been passed down as survival mechanisms. Peace and freedom is our cry. As we heal ourselves, perhaps we can even pass along our peace, our freedom, 7 generations forward, 7 generations back, creating a heritage of healing. May it be so, and amen. Please rise in body or spirit to join our voices in hymn 1017 in the Teal hymnal, Building a New Way. How about that? We close with the words of Kimberly Quinn Johnson, based on a poem by June Jordan. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Go in peace, and amen.